Why did you make me do this? Think, Mark!
So two very different pieces of content have just spawned in the superhero genre over the last couple of weeks. One of them is the second season of a terrific show with good writing, strong character development, and a unique take on the superhero genre. The second one is The Marvels. Talk about the duality of the superhero genre right now. On one hand, shows like Invincible, The Boys, and even movies like The Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy 3 prove that superhero fatigue is not actually real. On the other hand, movies like The Marvels, Blue Beetle, and The Flash prove that shitty corporate products fatigue is very much a real thing.
That is one big pile of shit.
But why is Invincible so good and so much better than most of the MCU content? Invincible is most of all a character-centric story. Everything revolves around the characters, far more so than most superhero stories. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of rampant violent action scenes, there's plenty of humor to be had, and there's even tons of world building, but everything starts with the characters, as most good stories do. A great example of this lies in the protagonist, Mark Grayson. The reason why Mark works as a protagonist is that despite the fantastic world that he inhabits, despite all the colorful characters that surround him, the storytelling priority is always Mark's character development, more specifically his difficulty in balancing his personal life with his superhero responsibilities. Mark's superpower as a protagonist lies not in his literal invincibility, but instead in his relatability as a character.
Right. Yeah, thanks.
On a side note, it's inevitable for a protagonist to come across as likable when said protagonist has to put up with someone like Amber. If Invincible is ever adapted to live action, I've got the perfect Amber to, well, play Amber. Anyways, getting back to the point, every story that deals with an overpowered superhero struggles with humanity. It's hard to humanize a character with the power to demolish entire planets. It's always the challenge for every movie director that takes on a Superman movie. However, Invincible succeeds because it prioritizes Mark's personal life over his superhero life. The end product is a likable and fundamentally relatable protagonist. Now, Invincible didn't exactly pioneer this approach.
Who am I? I'm Spider-Man, given a job to do. And I'm Peter Parker, and I too have a job.
Parker! Parker! No, stop!
There's a certain movie that is almost 2 decades old at this point that had already figured out this formula, but most superhero movies somehow didn't catch on. Marvel's approach may have started on the right track with the first Iron Man, which if you go back and rewatch, it's surprisingly character-centric. The movie pretty much revolves around Tony's arc as a prolific arms dealer who eventually finds a conscience. The story is not bogged down by setting up sequels, and yes, there are jokes to be had, but never at the expense of the drama. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are also pretty great examples of being absorbed in their characters. Everything revolves around character arcs to a fault, but most MCU movies choose instead to focus on forced and funny jokes, engulfing waves of meaningless CGI and setting up other sequels.
Not a great plan.
The thing about unfunny jokes is that if we at least like the characters, the bad jokes are a lot less grating and kind of endearing even.
There's a little pee coming out of me right now.
This Star-Lord joke is a good example. The joke itself is overused and doesn't really work, but because we like Star-Lord and we are in a good movie, it almost kind of works.
What's this, my mantra? It's the Wi-Fi password. We're not savages.
And this, well, this is the opposite. Just like the Star-Lord joke, it's overused and not really funny. But because we are in a dull movie with an underdeveloped protagonist, we are even more annoyed by the bad joke. Bad character development magnifies and compounds every small problem that the story has, all snowballing into a financial dumpster fire. Whether a story works or not can be most easily answered by do you care about the characters and or what happens next in the story. If the answer is yes to at least one of these questions, the story has done its job. Invincible doesn't just deal with likable and interesting characters, Amber notwithstanding. It also has legitimate intrigue. In the first season there is one driving force of intrigue. Why did Omni-Man kill the Guardians? What was his motive? What is his true backstory? Now in season 2 we have different questions. Where did Omni-Man go? When are the Viltrumites going to invade Earth? All of these are simple but effective questions to keep us invested in the story. The MCU, however, has a pitiful lack of intrigue these days, in part because the MCU lacks focus. If every movie is overburdened with setting up other sequels and telling forced jokes, there isn't that much time left to build an intriguing story or set up a menacing villain. The multiverse doesn't help either. If there are infinite versions of reality, then why should we care about what happens? Invincible also has a multiverse now, apparently.
People of Earth, we know. You all feel like we're the bad guys because my dad and I took over your planet.
I'm not a big fan of this, there's definitely a multiverse fatigue right now, but I'm willing to give the showrunners the benefit of the doubt. They will probably use it far more responsibly than Marvel ever will. The first season of Invincible aired 2 years ago. As a pretty popular superhero TV show, it would have been really easy to let greed set in.
I want you to deal with your problems by becoming rich!
But it surprisingly hasn't. No forced spin-offs have spawned anywhere, and they even took their time with Season 2, instead of trying to sack the Invincible fan interest for all it's worth. They simply focused on making the best Season 2 they could make, no matter how long it took. Marvel, on the other hand, well, let's just say that while I'm making this video, Kevin Feige is likely somewhere waterboarding Robert Downey Jr. with liquid cash to try and get him back as Iron Man somehow. They just can't help themselves. Instead of taking a break after Endgame and slowing down the content pipeline, they've cranked it up and ruined the whole franchise in the process.
See you, chump.